No grounds evictions for tenants from landlords in New South Wales going to be introduced. We're going to talk about the new laws and net effects that we're seeing when laws are introduced. Stay tuned. Top of the morning, expert property manager Cleo Witt here. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. More red tape for landlords, harder life for landlords, better life for tenants. What's the net effect? We're going to talk about all these things this morning, and the struggle's real.
Yeah, it's been rolled out. There is a date, the 19th of May, Doom Day. I don't know. It's become a little more official, although we're still yet to see all the official legislation come out yet.
For every tenant out there, there's a landlord out there, and I've seen plenty of legislation introduced for tenants and no legislation easing up for tenants and no legislation for easing up on landlords. It doesn't win votes.
No, it doesn't. And if anything, it does put the value of your real estate agent into high esteem. We are the voice, we are the advisor, we are the ones that go to battle for our landlords,
The
also for
hand.
our tenants. But yeah, it's one of those things where, we're constantly learning new reforms, we're constantly needing to, fully understand the legislation. I never know the reason why. That's the biggest question. Why? Why do these reforms hurt the landlords and come in at a crucial time, where we feel that it's the wrong time? It's never a good time, but it's the wrong time. So we know about them, but the reasoning behind it, we somewhat scratch our heads and be like, why are we doing this?
Well, in the history of the parliament, there's been one politician that used to support landlords. They didn't last very long. It doesn't get votes. Basically, I think when you see something like the budget come out, they want to appeal to voters that that faction of government, and they look at stuff, sensitivities where they're going to win votes. That seems to be prima facie what the motivation is. I could be wrong, I'm not a political person, but it seems like if you're supporting a landlord in politics, you're going to get bashed up, you're going to get beaten up, so much so they don't exist. And if you're supporting tenancies, that it wins a lot of hearts and it wins a lot of votes. It has been very hard for tenants, this climate. But, so my heart goes out totally, and I completely understand how that works. But, is it going to stop quantum or the force or all that effect of what they're trying to achieve, or do they simply need to build more investment properties, rather than shroud legislation, which, I find the net effect is never what they want it to be. Interesting, I've been asked by a lot of people about the a landlord not being able to ask a tenant, i.e., no grounds, to leave a property. This is the newest legislation that's going to be introduced. So we used to have a thing called no grounds eviction. So a landlord, being their own property, their own investment property, their own property they have a mortgage on, they may have owned it for a short time or a long time, they could ask the tenant just to leave just because. So their hands are going to be tied up behind their back. Can you explain exactly what this actually means? And then we'll talk about the net effect. What is government trying to achieve? I feel reprieve for tenants just in this concept. Like, it's like, oh, great, I'm going to, this is good. This is good for me as a tenant. And I feel landlords going, this is weird. And are you serious? I can't actually remove, I want to move into my own house and I can't,
Yep.
going on. I can't ask a tenant to leave my own house. What do you know so far about the legislation?
When an agreement is periodic, so the fixed terms ended, you automatically roll over as a tenant onto the periodic arrangement. During that time, the maximum notice that a landlord would be required to give a tenant to vacate for whatever reason, no grounds, was 90 days. That's a long time, 3 months. You've got 3 months to find a property. We don't have to give you a reason why you're moving out. Now the owner has to give a valid reason. So the tenants are in control of that situation to a part where the landlord can't just say, I've got a friend moving in, and then advertise it for $300 a week more. What's
Okay.
happening with this low stock situation is sometimes owners have been frustrated because they couldn't bring their property up to market value after COVID, after interest rates, still only one increase per year, 90 days. The tenant's most likely going to move in a month out of those three, and then he could advertise his property again in the current climate for $300 a week more, whatever that is. I guess they don't want the owner to be able to do that. They don't want the property, the rent prices going up in that big, sort of way, as in you could just get them out in 90 days and then everybody's properties are now back up to what they should be, because naturally tenants give notice, the ebb and flow of property in real estate. You normally have about 35 to 55 properties for rent. At the moment we have 4 and 5 and 8, and that's the maximum. So I guess that part of the no grounds notice has been a real issue,
Yeah.
which is how they've implemented this part of it. Also, I don't see the parameters of a landlord needing to sell their property changing much. As far as providing evidence, I mean, that's pretty easy, that you're putting the property on the market. That's a valid reason.
Right.
So if you're an owner and you're wanting to sell your property, I can't see the no grounds notice changing much for you there.
Yeah.
I feel the ones that will be affected the most are the people that are just wanting to move their tenant along for whatever reason, be it a minor reno, major reno. It's mainly to do with getting more money. That's what I feel. And then there's also the, relationships come to an end. You don't want to tell the tenant you're not happy with them as such, because NCAT does provide a lot of litigation if you went down the empathetic road with the tenant. This is the reason that this relationship's not working anymore. Then the tenant's given opportunity to remedy and remedy and remedy, whereas a landlord could in the past have just gone, you know what, I can't see this changing, 90 days, off you go. So what they also want us to do in this bureaucracy that we have at NCAT is to be at NCAT more, trying to get, mediation and tenants and people, and that whole process is so frustrating. I went there last week and there's so much paperwork and so much going back and forward, and people are wanting to be at work and they're not at work. They're losing money by being there. Landlords, tenants, I mean, agents, that's what we're paid to do. But
Go and
you can
attend
see that whole,
dispute resolution.
yeah, that whole conflict resolution. And this whole 90 days will provide more of that, I feel. No, your reason is not compliant. We'll end up at NCAT. We'll be at NCAT more, I feel, when a landlord is not able to get the tenant out for the reasons that they wish.
The
Or the
NCAT's for
tenant,
tenant, the NCAT's for disputes, for landlord tenant and tenant disputes, just so everyone knows. And so, what are the grounds that a tenant can, now that this law's been introduced, no grounds can't be used? What are the grounds that can be used to ask a tenant to leave an owner's asset?
one that was interesting, of course, was you have a family member moving in, or you have
Right.
someone, which happens a lot. I've got a friend returning from overseas. They're going to take my 2-bedroom unit, move in, whatever.
Landlord moving back in, is that okay?
Landlord moving back in, yes, that's okay. But what's not okay is if you say that you're going to do that and then there's evidence. So spark tenants as well getting more involved. If they notice that property online for rent, the landlord will pay a penalty fee for listing the property. There is a fine, and there is a
How much?
period. I don't know. I thought it was like 14,000. Like it's a lot of money. There's a big
Wow.
hefty fine, or you have to leave your property vacant for 3 months. Vacant for 3 months. So you're losing out on all that rent for 3 months just because you are changing your circumstance. And what if that circumstance changes again? Family friend didn't move in. Oh, now I need to relet it. How will that work? How will they gauge honesty into the situation? I don't know. Um,
So
excuse me.
the full info on the legislation hasn't landed.
They've given us the brief of what it's going to look like, but we haven't got all the reasoning exactly, enforced yet. That date, 19th of May, they'll have till then, I believe, to roll it all out. But you can see on the website, you can go on the Office of Fair Trading website, and it will outline the reasons approved and how that will work. Well, I guess we've just been stalling as property managers, hoping it's not going to roll out, even though we know it's
It's
going
coming.
to. But
It's coming. So I feel really
yeah,
bad for tenants because there's we've had landlords can't put rent up more than once a year. We've had that was one legislation. There can't be any rent bidding, as you can't say offers over on a rent. You can't do no grounds. There's three pieces of legislation in the last year or two that have come in. There's obviously a problem that they're trying to fix, and they're trying to, and it's not landlords complaining, it's tenants complaining. So they're putting this legislation in place. I guess it gets the votes, whatever. But and then there's lower stocks than we've ever seen on our part of Sydney, nor the northern beaches of where we operate. This is a really hard landscape for someone that's renting a property. It's a really, really hard landscape for a tenant. And my heart goes out to these guys to say, wow, this must be, but it doesn't seem like it's actually getting any easier. Even the net effect from these legislations, it doesn't seem like there's reprieve for tenants. Rents are still going up. It's still as harder as ever to rent a property. Like, I don't know, but all this legislation that's coming, like, for what? Because it may win the hearts and the votes, but the net effect, it's still a really hard world out there for the guys that are renting something
it's
that we're,
true. But
we're looking after.
yeah, but the real estate industry always cops it. We always cop it. What about the cost of living? If a majority of tenants are paying rent because rents are so high and everything, why are they still being charged so much at the supermarkets? They had this audit on, Woolworths, Coles, Aldi, whatever it was. You go to buy a bag of shopping, it costs you $150 and you've got nothing in the fridge. The majority of your money is going to rent, but yet food didn't get any cheaper. They're not doing anything about that. Where's all the
Well, I
legislation surrounding that?
I laugh about the energy costs. I don't see, and the net effect of like how much you're going to save with energy. I'm thinking that's like such a small fraction of property rent, for instance. Why aren't they doing stuff out there which is actually going to, the big figure stuff to help? And I think Mins has done a good job bringing in some of this developing, making it easier to develop and get approved. I don't know if he's going to achieve the net effect again. It's really interesting when these legislations coming in to see the true net effect, 18, 36 months later, because more often than not, it's a toothless tiger, but it wins the votes. It wins the votes. Which is interesting. So, Cleo, thank you so much for speaking with us about this.
Thank you.
Awesome. It seems like we're all in it together. I think that the landlords are in a hard position. I think the tenants are in a hard position. I think the agents are in a hard position. Um, Unfortunately, you do need an agent to manage your property because of all this legislation and fines that you're shrouded in. That's what I'm seeing more and more. People want to talk to us and get us to manage their assets than looking after it themselves more than ever because of what's happening here. Um, Interesting landscape.
It is. We'll see how it rolls out. If I start going grayer and grayer and grayer in all our shows, you'll know why.
It's true. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Cleo.
Bye.
See
Bye.
ya. Bye.
Thank you.